Thy Sword is a 2D side-scrolling platforming hack-and-slash game where you take control of one of several different heroes and your mission is to drive evil from the land. This game features procedurally generated levels, so no level will ever be the same when you play through the game. You can play alone or you can play together with a friend locally, but no matter how you decide to play, Thy Sword is a game that combines fast-paced action and strategic swordplay to become an experience I think most gamers may get some solid enjoyment out of. Thy Sword doesn't have too much of a story here, but what it does have serves as just the right amount of motivation to drive you forward. The Dark Overlord has descended upon the land with his evil monster horde. He destroys the white crystal into 5 smaller parts. It's up to you to reunite the 5 pieces of the white crystal, battle the Dark Overlord's horde of nasties, and return peace to the land. So raise thy sword and prepare for battle. The presentation in Thy Sword is pretty top-notch. Visually speaking, the game goes right for the nostalgia by sporting an impressive pixel art look. The multiple stages you'll be playing through all look very unique and visually stunning. The heroes you play as look distinct, and the monsters you fight look hideous and menacing. Beyond the visual presentation though, Thy Sword sports some pretty good music and wonderful sound design. There's a weight behind everything that you do in this game. When you swing your sword and cut into an enemy, it feels substantial and sounds very crisp. When sword strikes are deflected off of an enemy's shield or you deflect an incoming arrow, it sounds really satisfying. Especially when a swift sword strike from your sword removes the head of your would-be attackers right from their shoulders. When battle is raging on and blows are being exchanged, the blood effects look really good as well. Even if your character happens to catch themselves on fire, it all looks really great. In between some stages, the game will progress the story with a few lines of text that will be accompanied by more pronounced pixel art that really completes the visual presentation. Anyone that loves old school retro graphics, pixel art, or anything of the sort will certainly love the visuals on display in Thy Sword. In Thy Sword, your mission is to find and retrieve the 5 magic crystals in order to reform them into the white crystal in order to fight and defeat the Dark Overlord. To do that, you'll need to travel the land conquering each area you venture into. When starting the game, you'll have a choice of difficulty options. The Apprentice difficulty allows you to play the game with unlimited continues if you die. Adventure difficulty only gives you 3 continues, and the Hero difficulty requires you to beat the entire game with only 1 life and no continues. It is a true challenge, but it's up to you to decide what sort of experience you want out of the game. When you decide, you have to choose your character. Each character plays the same for the most part, but it's the items each character starts with that make the experience different. When you start off for the very first time, you have the Barbarian and the Valkyrie to choose from, but characters such as the Paladin and Viking can be unlocked as you play. The actual flow of the game is pretty simple. When you enter an area, you have to go through 5 stages. Each stage is a procedurally generated dungeon of sorts. In each stage, your goal is to simply eliminate all of the bad guys on screen, and the gate to the next stage will open. Simple, right? However, the game's many baddies will try and stop you. In order to defeat them, you're going to need to cut them down with your sword, or, if you have one, you can use a bow for longer ranged attacks. Your sword, though, is what you're going to be using the most. While using it, you have 2 attacks. a basic quick attack that you can use over and over by pressing the attack button, or you have a heavy attack that deals some pretty substantial damage. The heavy attack is the attack that you want to do your best to get good at using as quickly as possible. If you can connect with it on most enemies, it is an instant kill attack. Not only does it kill most enemies outright, it'll send their heads flying in glorious fashion. And it just sounds really cool. The thing about the heavy attack is there's a pretty big wind-up animation that involves your character moving. If you time it right, the attack lands. If you miss, you're more than likely going to take damage from the enemy that you were trying to decapitate, so be sure to practice. Here's a good strategy to employ. If you jump up and attack an enemy on a ledge above you, they're usually going to drop to the level below where you're on. While they're falling to the ground, you can use that time to line up a heavy attack, and right as they land, they'll meet with their grim fate. It is a great strategy, especially if a ledge has multiple enemies on it. Oh, and one more thing to mention, you get more money from enemies by using the heavy attack, so if you want to bank as much coin as you can early on, this is how you do it. You also have the ability to block, and while you can't block all incoming attacks, you can block most, so it's a skill that you'll want to get in the habit of using, especially if you're trying to work your way towards enemies trying to shoot arrows at you. Another skill you have is a magic attack. Hold the attack button down, and when the animation is complete, let go of the button and lay waste to most everything on screen. It's a great tool to give yourself some breathing room or deal some decent damage to boss monsters, but will only work if you have a fully charged magic meter. You can also use a bow if your character comes with one or you acquire one as you play. I wasn't super impressed with the bow that much personally. While using it isn't all that difficult, lining up a shot can be a little frustrating, and the overall damage output really is not worth the overall effort. Sometimes using it to make a flaming barrel explode from a distance can be pretty helpful, but those situations don't pop up very often. Plus, like I mentioned before, it is much more beneficial to your wallet to kill enemies with a heavy sword attack whenever you can, so I never really found myself using the bow all that often. Now, working your way through a level's multiple stages isn't the only thing you should be concerned with in Thy Sword. You'll want to collect as much money as you possibly can as you go. Killing enemies is a great way to do this, but scattered throughout each stage are boxes and barrels you can break open that can contain treasures and loot to line your pockets. Just be careful though, sometimes a box can contain a hidden enemy, so always be on your guard. After you complete a level, you'll visit the village. Here you can spend your coins to upgrade your hero with a variety of items. The cleric will typically have healing or defensive items, whereas the merchant will have weapons or offensive accessories. You can get items that will increase how much damage you can take, give you resistance to poison, or you can acquire weapons like the broadsword that does more damage per hit, or a longbow that allows you to shoot arrows. Every time you visit the village, the list of items these fellows have will change, so bear that in mind if you're on the fence about buying something that you can afford. It may not be there when you return. Now, what makes this frustrating sometimes is seeing an item that you want and you can't afford right now, but then never seeing that item again later in the game. It is what it is, however, bear that in mind when you go shopping. You can also play a game of blackjack if you check in with the gamblers in the village. You can potentially come into some money pretty quickly if you're lucky, but if you aren't and lose all of your money, you can kiss any items you want to purchase goodbye for a while. Earning money in this game can be pretty slow and a little frustrating if you're trying to save it for something that might not appear in the shops. However, there's one more game addition that can give you a leg up when it comes to finances. Sometimes in a stage, there will be a locked treasure chest. Flying around the level will be a black raven holding the key to that chest. If you can strike the raven with a sword blow or hit it with an arrow, it'll drop the key. Collecting it will have the treasure chest open up and spew coins and gems all over the stage. It's an interesting idea when you think about it. You want to attack the raven before it flies away, but doing so may put you at risk of an enemy attack if you aren't careful. But wait too long or scare the raven and it'll fly off screen and you won't be able to hit it then. I like that you have to think through your moves here and decide if the risk is worth the reward. Now, as you complete levels, more levels open up to you and you can travel to them in whatever order you wish on the overworld map. Some levels have boss monsters at the end of the final stage, and you'll need to defeat them in order to get their crystal. The bosses in Thy Sword can be pretty tough, especially when you fight them for the first time. However, each boss has a specific attack pattern, so once you figure that out and memorize it, you'll have a pretty big advantage in battle. Each boss that you come across is just unique enough that I felt like each encounter posed its own unique challenge. You can absolutely consider yourself a true hero if you can fell them all, especially if you can slay the Dark Overlord himself. So when you wrap it all up, Thy Sword is a great platforming game that knows what it wants to be and does not overstay its welcome. I took around 2 hours to complete the game start to finish my first time through, so this is a great game to play through if you aren't looking for anything too big or robust. The graphical presentation is great, the sound design is top-notch, and I had a genuine good time playing through this game. Plus, after beating the game, I had several unlocked characters that I could choose from, so jumping right back into the fray was pretty fun with a new character. While the gameplay can start to get a little repetitive at times, I think this is the perfect game to play in a day or two, put back on your shelf, and then go back to it after some time has passed and you're itching for something that's simple yet fun to pass the time. Oh, and I should mention trophies and achievements for Thy Sword are pretty easy to earn, so if you're looking for a fun game to play while bolstering your trophy count or gamer score, this is the one for you. At the time of this video, Thy Sword is available on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PlayStation Vita, and Steam. So what are you waiting for? It's time to rally against evil and show the Dark Overlord that we don't take kindly to him bringing his evil scourge onto the land. The fighting will be fierce and the path we walk will be filled with blood, but only you can save us, heroes. It is time for you to raise thy sword. Thank you very much for watching my review of Thy Sword. What did you think of this game? If you have any thoughts or experiences, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If there's any other game out there that you'd like me to cover in a quick review, leave those in the comments as well. I just want to thank you one more time for hanging out with me today. I'm always happy to hear from you, and I look forward to having you back anytime. Until then, my friends, my name is Nomad, and you can find me roaming the Retro Wildlands.